Alright, welcome back to Racing Rundown on YouTube today. I do just want to quickly, before we get into the topic of this video, the Apple Blossom Handicap coming up this weekend on Saturday, preview for that. I do just want to apologize a little bit for the kind of lack of uploads. It's been kind of touch and go with the podcast and all the stuff that's going on with the coronavirus and everything, but there will be a lot more content coming out on YouTube over the course of the next couple of days. I know Eric and I have been planning a lot of discussion videos and, stuff that I've wanted to do and we've wanted to do on the show for a while, and we just never, or didn't really have the right time to do it because there was always a lot of, actual racing stuff going on. But now that there's not really anything to do, not really, or I shouldn't say not really anything, but not really a lot to do with actual current day racing, has been a lot of stuff that we've been able to do. I know over on the podcast we did, over the past couple of weeks, we did a list of the top 50 horses of the first 20 years of the 21st century. So if you're interested in that, you can head over onto the various platforms where the podcast is and check those out. We've also got stuff coming directly to YouTube. So with all that being said, I want to get to the topic of today's video, which we're talking about the Grade 1 Apple Blossom. First time there's been a Grade 1 race in a long time, and for this race, Eric and I both mentioned that, I'm not sure whether or not we said this on an actual live video before, but we were talking about how, for this race specifically this weekend, the Apple Blossom, it would have been a complete shock to us, and there would really be no reason for it to not be this way. But this race definitely should have had a 14-horse field, and it does. So, people are recognizing, and the reason why that is because, with all the tracks that are shut down and everything, there's really not, you don't know when you're going to be able to run your horses. And I know perfect example of a horse that this could kind of refer to, we'll get to in a couple of minutes, but Come Dancing, who most people would think of as a sprinter, and she is, Come Dancing, ran most of her races last year at the 6 to 7 furlong distance, a couple at a mile. But over the course of last year, generally Come Dancing was more regarded as, the sprinting type horse, and, not one that you would put with a 1 1/16, 8.5 furlong type race, even though she has won at the 8.5 furlongs. And she's not the only horse that, fits this description of, maybe doesn't necessarily perfectly fit with this race, but with the uncertainty of the situation, and you don't know when the next time you're going to be able to race is, that's why Come Dancing ran here, and that's why some of the horses who ran last weekend in the various Oaklawn 3-year-old stake, the Oaklawn Stakes, or the Oaklawn Mile race for older horses, which was won by Tom's d'Etat last week. So just wanted to mention those and make that point at the beginning of the show before we get on to talking about all the horses in the field. So I'll run through the field really quickly. Number 1, you got All These Candy. Number 2, you got Cold Water. 3, All Emma. 4, the aforementioned Come Dancing. 5 is Point of Honor. 6, Street Band. 7, Queen Nekia. 8, Sarcosa. 9, Horologist. 10, Cookie Dough. 11, Serengeti Empress. 12, Go Google Yourself. 13, Lady Apple. And you got the 14, Outside Post, CC. So, race is bringing in a lot of stakes winners. Group of 3-year-olds from last year, group of really strong 3-year-olds from last year. A bunch of them, those being Lady Apple, Street Band, of course Serengeti Empress, and Point of Honor, were all high-level graded stakes winners in the past 3-year-old year. And of course this year with a couple of those horses, Serengeti Empress and Lady Apple, both have gotten off to strong starts with graded stakes wins in this, their 4-year-old year. Lady Apple back in the Houston Ladies Classic earlier in the year, and Serengeti Empress, she won the Azeri Stakes in her last start out at Oaklawn, where she beat the other 2 3-year-olds that we're going to talk heavily about on the show, Lady Apple and Street Band. But in addition to those 2, you've got a couple shippers in from the West Coast. You got Cece, who in her last start out won the Grade 1 Beholder Mile at Santa Anita, where she beat the really talented 4-year-old sprinter, Hard Not to Love, who was stretching out for the first time to go a mile. And you've got All These Candy, the 5-year-old, who ran well in some of the stakes out in California for older fillies and mares, and she won the Clement L. Hirsch last summer at Del Mar, going this very same 1 1/16 distance. So with her, the distance is not really a problem for her, but Her last start in the aforementioned Beholder Mile, she was third behind Cece. So you got the 2 California shippers, as well as the various other horses who are here. Richard Baltus brings in as well. Before I touch on the big horses of this race, I do just want to bring up, I know Eric sent me a message and he wants me to mention, before we get into the larger names, another horse that intrigues him, Aw Emma, who has demonstrated over the course of her career that she really handles the Oaklawn track very well. 3 of her last 4 starts in allowance company she was victorious in, including a race on the 5th of April, which was her first start since the Azeri, where she dumped her jockey at the start of the race and was a DNF in that race. But the question mark that comes with her, with Aw Emma in this race, would be the fact that in her 2 starts against Stakes Company, she is winless, although the Azeri does come with the asterisk next to it that she did not have a rider for that race. So be that as it may, she was still 5th in her one other stakes start back at Churchill Downs last May. But a horse that has demonstrated that she handles Oaklawn very well, and would probably be the type of horse that you'd look at to kind of take a shot with. Maybe not necessarily the strongest on the odds board, but definitely a horse that, you know, has demonstrated that she can perform very well at Oaklawn, and one that might be worth looking to take a shot with. Now, I talked about at the top of the show the circumstances that led to some horses, specifically Come Dancing, making the decision to come to this race and run here. Now, the decision to bring Come Dancing here, I'm not going to spend any more time talking about that, but I want to talk about her chances in this race. You know, on the surface, you look at her and you think, you know, she's a sprinter, and, you know, ultimately that's what I think is the case with her. I'm not going to say that she's better going distance, although she has in the past been able to. Last summer at Belmont, she won the Ruffian around a mile, and then before that, she won the Royal Delta, which is a mile and a 16. So she's been able to go this distance before, but I don't think it's her first choice, and I don't think the first choice of them would be to be here. Also worth mentioning, she was second behind Midnight Bisou in the Ogden Phipps. So she's run well at this distance of a mile and a 16th, but I don't think it's her first choice. And I don't think she can go much farther than a mile and a 16th. You know, the Belle Dame, which she ran in October of 2018, was clearly too much for her. She was 5th in the Belle Dame in that start and hasn't gone farther than a mile and a 16th since then. And, you know, like I've mentioned already, I think that this is her best distance at this mile and a 16th. But, you know, looking at it, she has been able to go a mile and a 16th before, and I would not be surprised to see her be able to pick up some of the pieces of this. This is a race, or she's a closer, and this is a race that has the potential to favor closers. You've got a horse in here, Serengeti Empress, who it's well documented that she's a horse that goes to the front, and with a 14-horse field, and the fact that it's less likely for her, I should say, that she'll be able to get up front and be able to get away like she was able to in the Kentucky Oaks and in the Azeri. Those her last 2 wins, which has been basically the form of success for Serengeti Empress. When she's been able to get away on the front end, that is, you don't beat Serengeti Empress when she gets away on the front end. And that kind of segues to talking about Serengeti Empress. You know, the question with her is she going to be able to get away on the front end? If the answer to that question is yes, then you can make your bets on Serengeti Empress and go to sleep on it. If that answer is no, then you got to look at some of the other horses in this race, because I don't think Serengeti Empress is going to be able to survive a speed duel. She wasn't able to do that in the Acorn. She wasn't really able to do that in any of the other starts where she's had to go out and be contested on the lead. You know, when she's alone, she's got a good chance to carry that speed, but when she's not, then that's when you start to have problems with it. And, you know, you have horses like Cece, who's shipping in, Cece and Ollie's Candy, who are shipping in from the West Coast, who were both coming off the pace in the Beholder Mile, the last start out. But in addition to the 2 California shippers, you've also got potential closers, Point of Honor, who Eric that was another horse that Eric wanted me to mention, and I was going to as well on my own accord. But Point of Honor, who in her signature win, the Black-Eyed Susan, last spring at Pimlico, she came from very far back and was able to run by Cookie Dough in the stretch in that race, and is another one of the noted closers. And in the aforementioned Street Band, who had a closing victory in the Cotillion against the loaded group of 3-year-old fillies, Serengeti Empress, Bellafina, and Guarana. All three of them were horses that she had to run by in the stretch of that race. And then you got Lady Apple, who closed nicely to pick up third in Serengeti Empress's Kentucky Oaks win. So you got those three horses, and then you also have CC and Ollie's Candy. Although I will mention with CC, she's probably a horse that is going to sit closer to the lead than any of those than the other four that I mentioned. You know, she's probably not going to be up there battling with Serengeti Empress, but she'll be probably 2-3 lengths off what I could see a race developing between Cookie Dough going out there maybe to challenge Serengeti Empress. Like Cookie Dough set the pace in the Black Eyed Susan bet last May at Pimlico. So, and that could set up well for, as I mentioned, that could set up for some of the other horses come dancing as well. So there's a lot of horses that got a good chance to win this race. Very, very deep group of horses. I don't want to say that it's one of the best fields that we could have gotten, because there are some other horses that are not here, most notably Midnight Beast. I know some people have expressed the wish that Midnight Beast was here, and unfortunately, with the situation that happened with the Dubai World Cup, Midnight Beast was unable to get back over here and be able to be ready for this race. But who is here? It's a very deep group. There's a lot of horses that have a good chance to win. And it's really, again, like I mentioned already, but to reiterate that, it's all dependent on the setup. If Serengeti Empress is loose away on the front, then good luck trying to catch her, because Serengeti Empress has demonstrated the ability to be able to carry that speed if she's able to get that uncontested lead, or be able to get away at some point down the backside of a race. If there's a speed duel, or if there's horses that go out and challenge Serengeti Empress, then she's going to be in for a big challenge, and it's going to open that race up to a lot of the other horses in this race, the ones that we talked about, mainly Come Dancing, Point of Honor, Street Band, Lady Apple, and CC, and the other California shipper, Ollie's Candy. But before I sign this up, I do just want to mention one more horse that might be another one that you like to take a look at. You've got go Google yourself, who's shipping up from her last start down at Gulfstream, the February 17th win for her in the Grade 3 Bayakoa. She was a winner of a couple of stakes last year, including the Locust Grove Stakes at Churchill Downs at Grade 3. She's been second in some of her other graded stake starts, including the Fall City Handicap at Churchill Downs in her last start of 2019. But she's also won over this Oaklawn track, so that's another plus for her. I think there's better plays than her. I think there's a lot more talented horses in this race, but Go Google Yourself is definitely one that, you know, if you don't want to pick any of the big favorite horses, or if you're, you know, concerned about the shippers coming in, how they'll handle the track, or, you know, you don't want to pick Serengeti Empress because you're concerned about whether or not she'll be able to carry her speed as far as she's able to, then she's another one that you want to consider at a price that is a little bit easier to handle than some of the other big long shots. Go Google Yourself sitting right now at 12-1 on the morning line. So those are the horses for this race, the Grade 1 Apple Blossom. I will pick Serengeti Empress. Serengeti Empress is the horse that Serengeti Empress, I use the phrase a lot, die on X horse's hill, and Serengeti Empress is one of the horses that I die on the Serengeti Empress hill. So I'm going to take her, I'm going to swallow the potential speed duel and the fractions, and I'll go with Serengeti Empress, but there are a lot of other horses in this race that if there is a pace meltdown, that will definitely be able to come in, pick up the pieces. So thanks for tuning into this episode, and we will see you back for some more Hall of Fame stuff, and also later on a preview of the Count Fleet Sprint Handicap. So we will see you for all that. Thanks for stopping by.
Serengeti Empress still trying to find some way through. They come to the top of the stretch, and it is Guarana. Guarana has taken the lead. Straight Band has made a big move on the far outside. They're coming down to the final furlong. Guarana, here comes Straight Band on the outside, and Straight Band has come from far back to take the lead. Guarana now second, but Straight Band is beginning to move away, and this will be a signature moment for Straight Band. She's 7-1, and she's got it. Straight Band wins the Cotillion just over 2 at the end. Guarana was second, and then Horologist and Bellafina.